Okay, let's talk about how we would design this part, the methodology for creating this part. It's a fairly simple part. It has two of these little, call them elongated hole sections that are equal, and then one that's a little bit smaller. And let's take a look first at where the axis system is for this part. And you'll see that we chose it to be right in the center of the part, right down the center of this, right here. And there's a reason we chose that, and you'll see it as we're designing the part. Okay? First, let's go into the first sketch, and let's see the approximate dimensions. It's about 120 by 200. So let's get out of Sketcher there, and let's go make our first sketch. Let's pick the XY plane, and let's pick our centered rectangle. And we know that we want it to be about 200 by about 120. So there's 200 by 120. And let's get out of Sketcher and let's make a pad coming up. Make it up a little thicker, and we'll just say OK. Now you'll note that for us, we like to change the color of the first feature, the part body, to be the darker gray. That makes sketching on it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so now we have our base. Now we're going to draw this first elongated hole in the center. We're going to go to Sketcher, and we're going to sketch on the YZ plane. Okay. Now we're going to use our elongated hole. We're going to pick up the origin. We're going to go up vertically and then come out about like so. Now we're going to delete the bottom half. Okay. Now when we deleted the bottom half, we lost the vertical here, so we're going to replace the vertical constraint, the geometric constraint. Now we should project this edge into our sketch, but at this point in your career, you don't know how to project. So we're simply going to draw a line from this point to that point, and now that sketch is got a line that's going across the bottom. Now I'm going to do a constraint between that line and this bottom edge of the solid and say right-click coincidence. Okay, so now this bottom is set, and of course the top, it can go wherever it needs to go dimensionally, but this is the shape that we needed. Let's get out of Sketcher. Let's make a pad. We know that these are supposed to be 20 across, so when we're over here and we make our pad from this sketch, we're going to make it go 10, and then we're going to use the mirrored extent option. That will ensure that it's right down the center of our part. Okay. Now we need to make a copy of this over here. At this point in our career, we don't know the translating option, so we're going to make another sketch over here. Now, I could go to Sketcher and sketch over here and sketch the same profile again. But if I unhide this sketch, you will see that that sketch, right down in the middle there, we can actually use the same sketch for two different pads. So I'm going to select the pad option, and I'm going to select this same sketch again. And you'll notice that here in the tree, it put the same sketch under two different features. And now I'm going to simply drag this one out, drag this one out. Now, how do I make limit 2 exactly on this plane? Well, I come over here to the More option, and I say that limit 2 is going to be up to a plane, and I pick that plane. Now, how do I make limit 1 exactly 20 millimeters back from that edge? Well, if this edge is 100, then this should be exactly minus 80, and I'll make it exactly minus 80. There you go. That's perfect. So we actually use the same sketch for both of those. Now, for this third elongated hole, it's much smaller. So we can't use the same sketch. What's interesting also is if I double-click this sketch and I were to make this sketch taller, both of those would get taller because they're both based on the same sketch. Okay. Now let's draw this third one. Okay. I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to go unhide sketch 2 so you can see it, and I'll double click it to go into it. And now I'm going to select everything by pressing and dragging, and then Control C to copy, get out of Sketcher, and now I'm going to sketch on this sketch plane. So I'm going to pre-select the sketch plane, select Sketcher, and now I'm going to do a Control V, which is paste. And I pasted everything from the other sketch plane into this one. Well, it got most things, but it didn't get everything. You'll notice that there was a constraint here that kept that there. So this is one way I could do it and just reattach my constraint. I'm going to get out of Sketcher, but I'm going to show you a better way. I'm going to hit the delete key to delete that sketch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sketch 2 and I'm going to Control C to copy it, and I'm going to paste it back into the part body. I'm going to select the part body and I'm going to right click and set paste or Control V. See the shortcuts there. Okay. So now I have sketch 4, which is right on top of sketch 2. I'm going to hide sketch 2. Okay. So this is sketch 4. Now there's a neat option that we have that we can actually right click on sketch 4 and we can say we would like to change what's supporting it. Instead of the plane, and it's telling me I'm going to have to watch myself here and make sure that I'm not switching to a different plane that's not parallel to the plane I'm on. So I'm going to pick this one, and there you go. What's neat about this one is when I double click it, you will see that it even got the coincidence constraint. And now I can actually just drag this a little smaller, and I can make this, let's just make it 20. There we go. There we go. So now we're looking very similar to what we need. And let's make a pad. And then, of course, this needs to be exactly -20. Okay, there we go. Now, rather than -20, what I've preferred you done is I would have preferred that you did a reverse direction and made this 20. Okay? Better to have a positive value if you can help it. Okay? And now for this one here, I'm actually going to drag this sketch down a little bit so that it looks more like it's supposed to look. More like this one on the left. Okay, great. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to show you how to put in the fillets. And we're going to do them the traditional way, but then I'm going to show you a neat little trick. Let's put a fillet in and let's pick this one, and this one. And we know that the yellow fillets are supposed to be 10. So we'll key in 10 here. We'll do a preview. You'll see that these have sharp edges, but this one over here has a rounded edge. So what we'd like to do with our fillets is we have to pick this option called Keep Edges. So we have to pick 10 millimeters, and we have to put our mouse over here now. We have to keep this edge. We have to say Preview. There we go. Say OK. And that looks really cool. Now that it's still pre-selected, I'll make it yellow. Okay. Now let's do the same thing here. Well, there's kind of a neat option that you can actually do here. We could have done it here. I'll do a new option here. This is pad 2 right here. This one's pad 2. So I'm going to pick the fillet option. And instead of picking tangency, I'm going to pick intersection. And I'm going to intersect pad 2 either by picking it here or picking it in the tree. And look what it found. It found the little red all the way around it. And if I say preview, you see that, wow, it found all 4 edges. And now all I have to do is put my mouse in the edges to keep and pick this edge and this edge and say OK. Wow, that was a slick way of doing it even faster. Wow, I think I'll even do that way over here. So I could have done it here, here, and here. I could have done it that way. But you know what? There's even a faster way. I'm going to use this same way, but in a slightly different way. Okay? I'm going to delete these fillets. Now I'm going to choose fillet option again, except this time, when I choose the intersect option, I'm going to pick pad 1. So it's going to find the intersection of pad 1 with everything else. So I'm going to select pad 1. And look at this. It found the red around here. It found all 4 red edges here. And it found 3 red edges here. And if I do a preview, you see they all still have sharp corners. But I can pick my edges to keep, and I can pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 edges to keep, do a preview, and say OK. And then let's turn those yellow. Wow, a single fillet for all 3 of those. That's just amazing. Now we still need to put in these green fillets. Those are so easy now. We'll put those in the traditional way. The green ones are 20 millimeters, and we simply pick 1, 2, 3, and around here to pick 4 and say OK. And we'll turn those green. Now we need to put our holes through here. So we'll pre-select this edge here, and we will put a hole. We'll touch anywhere on this face, and it's going to snap to the center because we pre-selected that edge. And we will pick up to next, and we'll just let it be whatever it is there, that diameter. Okay. Now I'm going to put a hole through this way. If I put it through here, I'm going to have to watch that it doesn't go past here, because if it hits here, it'll knock off the top of this part. If I start my hole here going the other way, I can just say up to last, and I don't have to worry about it. So the smarter thing to do is to pick this edge and put this hole going that way and pick up to last. Okay? And I'll just make this hole a little bigger because this is supposed to be a fairly large hole. Okay, let's make it about 30. I think that's what it actually is. Okay, there you go. So now we have our holes ready. Now we're going to use some special techniques to put in these keyholes. Okay, so these keyholes, this one goes all the way through. This one goes from the top to the, doesn't go all the way through, it just goes through this first part, and then this one goes through also. We're going to put them in 3 different ways. Okay, first I'm going to put in this one going across. Okay, so I want to put a little keyhole going across here. So I'm going to select the hole icon, and I'm going to pick this surface. I'm going to pick it somewhere over here, and I'm going to set it to be, I think that's 5 is what they have the diameter being. And I'm going to go to my positioning sketch now. So now this point, actually I'll turn off the snap option. This point needs to be right up here on this edge, and it needs to be halfway in between these two. So the first thing I'm going to do is pre-select it, hit the dimension icon, and pick this edge, and I'm going to set this to be 10. That's halfway. Okay. Now I need to get it up here on this black edge here, so I'm going to select my dimension icon, pick the 2, and right-click and say coincidence. And now, if I get out of Sketcher, and you'll see that I have the up to last option picked, and that is perfectly all the way through. Now, this one here, it has to be from the top coming down, and I don't have a nice edge to snap it to. So I'm going to show you how we put a point directly on the top of this surface. So I'm going to put a hole, and I'm going to pick this surface over here, intentionally off to the side so that you can see that I've got to position it back up to the top. And I'm going to pick the up to next option so that it just goes through that portion of it. Okay? So now it's in, but wow, it's far from being vertical. Okay? So let's go to its positioning sketch, either by double-clicking it or doing it here. There's my positioning sketch. Let's reframe this. Okay? And let's flip it. There we go. Now, I would like for that point to be right down this vertical axis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that point, pre-select it, and remember, I'm still in Sketcher. And I'm trying to dimension that point to pull it back to this plane. So now I'm going to put a dimension on between that point and this plane and right-click coincidence. So now it's perfectly lined up down this plane. Okay? Wow, it's not even on the part, but it's down that plane. And now I'm going to position it to be exactly halfway across. So now I'm going to put another dimension on between here and this face, and that is going to be, oops, got it wrong there. There we go. Wrong one. Let's get it around here. There we go. So now let's put a dimension on between here and this face, okay? And we want to right click and we want to do the horizontal measure, space it, and let's do 10. That's halfway. So now that hole's exactly positioned and it goes up to next. That was a lot of work to do that. Let me show you what I think is a simpler way to do a hole like that. I'm going to select my plane option and I'm going to select this plane here, and I'm going to make another plane that's offset from it up here. And I just want to make sure that it's above this surface here, and I'm going to move it over there. So now, and I'm going to pull it down a little bit. I just want to make sure it's above this surface. Okay, and I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to actually make a hole on that plane. So I'm going to make a hole, and I'm going to select this plane. Now if you reverse direction, there's nothing for it to make a hole into. So you have to make sure you're going the right way. And I'm going to say up to next. And in the position it's at, all the way to the bottom is up to next. But that's fine. Okay. So I've got it in there, but as before, it still needs to be positioned, but at least it's going straight down now. I like that. Okay. So if I double click it and now go to its positioning sketch for the hole, I simply now need to make it right in the middle here. So I need 2 dimensions on this. I need a dimension between here and, say, this edge, and that needs to be 10. Okay, and now I need it directly in the center of the part this way. So I'm going to put it a little bit off. I'm going to pre-select it and make a dimension between that and this vertical plane right here. And I'm going to say right-click coincidence. Now that was a much simpler way, I think, to make a hole. And I like to have this positioning sketch to be fairly close to where the hole is, so that if you ever have a question about it, I'm going to put it in no-show right now. I'm going to hide it, and I'm going to hide these sketch planes. But now if you were ever to go to the hide mode, you would see that plane there, and that's the plane used for the hole, obviously, because it's right next to that feature. Okay? So that is how we would create this part. We learned a couple techniques. We learned a really cool filleting option called intersect, and we also learned that in this case we could use this flat surface and this edge to position the hole. In this case we did it maybe the traditional way, which required a little bit of work. Here we used a cheater plane that we created to help create our hole in an easier manner.